We're going to take a minute or two here to look at all of the columns in show IP EIGRP neighbor because we tend to pay attention really to just the first 4 or 5 here without really checking out what those last few mean. So let's go over every single value left to right, starting with that H. And this is one that's really easy to miss because it's all the way over here on the left-hand margin. And that is a 0 underneath of it, not an O. It's not HO train or anything like that. This is simply the order in which the neighbors were discovered. And it does start with 0, obviously, so the next one would have a 1 and so forth. Now for address, this is the IP address of the neighbor through which the adjacency is being formed. We've got interface next, and that's the interface on this router upon which the router is receiving hellos from that address. Now the whole time I think we've hammered that one into the ground. The router is kind enough to tell us that it is in seconds, and right now it's at 12. If we refresh that, of course, it should be coming right back up. Let's check that, 12 seconds, so there you go. But you can also see the uptime definitely has changed. I've mentioned this before, please allow me to mention it quickly again. Sometimes we just have to play detective in this business. We're not always being told the truth, I guess is the way to put it. We're not always being told the truth or being given the most accurate information. It's not always malicious. You know, we all, oh yeah, it's been up for, 6 months and the uptime is just fine. Well, you don't necessarily want to look at it right in front of them because that's challenging their integrity. You can question integrity, but don't challenge it right in front of them until you have to. With the uptime, of course, if someone says, well, we really haven't had a problem with that, then you run show IP EIGRP neighbor, and you see, well, you've got an uptime of 44 seconds here, so it hasn't, that adjacency has been up that long, and you can see here that it's up to 10 minutes and 27 seconds. But something, you can have a flapping link, and just as you have a flapping link, you can have a flapping adjacency. So you might run this all of a sudden, if you got 44 seconds, then here in the middle, maybe some console messages saying your adjacencies are lost. But if for some reason you're not getting those console messages, if they've been turned off, and you go to uptime and it's 31 seconds, you're either in a time warp or, which does sound like fun, but what could be happening is the adjacencies could be flapping. Now these last 4 values over here, let me move our viewing window here a little bit, get all of that last one in. You can go a long time, frankly, without using these values or really paying attention to them, but I do want you to know what they mean because they're not real intuitive. We've got a cert and an RTO and a Q count and sequence number. I think we can dope that one out, but let's start with SRTT. That is smooth round trip time, and if there's one kind of round trip we like in this business or any other, it's a smooth one. What we mean by smooth is this is the number of milliseconds it takes for an EIGRP packet to get to that neighbor and for an acknowledgement to come back. So in our nice little tidy lab network here, we've got a smooth round trip time of 1 millisecond. That's pretty good. It's almost as good as it could possibly be. That RTO stands for retransmission timeout, and that is the length of time until a packet will be retransmitted to that neighbor. Q count, which is 0, which makes sense right now in our lab. This is the number of EIGRP packets waiting to be sent. And then finally, we do have sequence number, and that is the sequence number on the last packet that was received. So since I just rebuilt this adjacency, obviously, since the first uptime was 44 seconds, it makes sense that sequence number is 1. They became adjacent, they exchanged the full routing tables, and then they're good to go. So let's see, that's really it for show IP EIGRP neighbor. What I want to tell you about the next video, we're really getting into some meat and potato stuff here coming up. And let's take a look at it. Actually, I want to show you the lab we're going to use, and it should look familiar. It's one we've already built. We're not going to be working with the lab as much as doing a walkthrough on the board, and you will see why, because this is really important one. We've got a couple of distances with EIGRP, not the administrative distances. We have 3 administrative distances. We're going to see all 3 of those in action a couple of videos from now. But coming up next, we have 3 other distances, which are actually just 2 other distances. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about in the next video. What I do want you to do in the meantime, though, is grab something to write with, because we've got a couple of exercises, especially if this is the first time you watch the video. You need to work these out on paper. So grab something to write with, and I'll see you on the next vid.